Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, issue 6. Tom King writing with Bilquis Evely on art. And dare I say, the best issue of this so far.
You're only saying that
very
because of
much
Comet the
disagree.
Super Horse.
Well, if maybe I would have heard one of those opinions and agreed with one of them. I don't know. One at a time, please.
Go, Connor.
Yeah, I think we both paused, thinking the other one would go, and then neither did, so we both jumped in. No, I disagree pretty strongly. I will say I agree with Matt's point when he brought up, because I heard that, obviously.
Yeah. So I said it's only because of Comet the Super Horse you feel that way, Pete.
I do dig Comet the Super Horse.
Yeah.
I mean,
I liked it. I don't think this was the best, but this was a really solid issue. The art, I feel like this is Evely's one of her strongest.
I found myself towards the back of the issue being like, oh, this art is gorgeous. I was just saying that I was barely even reading it anymore. I was like barely taking it in because I was kind of checked out of a lot of the issue by that point.
So I like here how King takes time to that's what I'm looking for. To reinterpret Kara's origins from Argo City, in whatever this version of her, maybe the reason why she's a little bit surlier, right? Because we get a lot of the backstory of Krypton.
I mean, this definitely added a bit of darkness to it, because, like, obviously, we always say the difference between Kara and Superman in terms of, like, the escaping Krypton is that he doesn't remember it, so it's all just something he learns later. She actually did live there. She was there till an age where she can remember it and understand it and misses what it looked like. And there was a focus on this of the tree with the blue and the red leaves, which obviously is Superman colors, but which is a nice little touch. And I love that it didn't show you it, though. It's like, I think if it showed you it, like, explicitly, I think if you show that explicitly, it feels less special. But because you just hear about it, and we don't get to see it because, like, it's gone, right? We don't get to see it because it's already gone. That's a super nice touch. But yeah, it does this thing where it's like, okay, Krypton explodes, but Argo City survives for a little bit, and Kara's in Argo City with her parents. Her mother dies almost instantly, though. She's sick for a little bit, and then she's dead. And then it's like, as they're drifting closer to a yellow sun, the just the land, the rock, is starting to turn into kryptonite, and it's
that's what killed her mom, right? Where she was starting to get sicker. Did I misunderstand? Let me.
I thought it was she was getting sicker from the radiation.
Yeah, maybe the radiation, but she was one of the first, though. If it was that, she was early on.
She was, and that's why Zor-El realized that it was the radiation coming from the rock, and so they have to, she has to hammer these things into the earth that'll counteract the radiation.
Yeah, lead. So, but it's just, it gives it this grueling, like, okay, she already watched her world die, and then she watched her mother die, and now she's going to slowly, like, realize that this little Argo City, like, chunk can't be saved, because it's like, okay, it's kind of working. She works really hard to help with this, even though she's only 14. But ultimately, there's like a, there's a storm. There's like little meteorite pieces that end up, like, damaging a lot of the city and, like, ruining all of their technology that's, like, keeping this bubble, like, over over the city, so it's safe and it has atmosphere and so on and so on. And it's not until this point where Zor-El finally goes, "There's hope for you, but this place is doomed. We're all going to die of poisoning within probably weeks. So here's what I'm going to do." And I like that it points out that he kind of, like, didn't, he thought Jor-El was a bit of a idiot for building a ship for his son. He looked down upon it. He thought it was a waste of time. But now, like, he's at this point where he's like, you know what? I think I'm going to try and do what he did. I'm going to make you a little ship. There's just enough material to do one. So I'm going to save you. So there's this extra cruel, like, dark element to her origin that's presented here, which is she like, because it's the very first thing that the narration says, because it's the other character who's, like, saying that she finally told me her story. And it's like, Krypton's death was not as slow as people think it was. Not for Kara. It was this prolonged thing where there was, like, quakes, and there was people dying, and then there was the long portion on Argo City where people were getting sick, and it was this slow realization that this is all gone. Like, she had to accept the tree and the wildlife was gone, and then she had to accept her parents were going, and everything was gone. So it adds a lot of weight to, like, her tragedy. It's like it's not just that she had to evacuate Krypton as it was dying. It was like no, she got to see the torment and the disease and like just all these elements to it. That
she had to live the death of Krypton, right? It wasn't just this. It exploded, now it's gone, right? She had to watch everyone she cared about suffer, and then now she has to live with that because she can remember. And it does add that darkness to her. And when you read her through here, why she's kind of driven, so this girl doesn't have to be like her. That's why she's going to fulfill her promise. It's not just about Crypto being shot, right? It's about like this girl she doesn't want her experience to become this girl's experience.
Yeah, the slow realization that she's lost everything. And
right.
And the good thing about this issue is that it counterbalances this darker side to her origin story with this like feat of just almost magical brilliance, which is so they get to Krem and he's got another one of these orbs that can teleport her somewhere or whatever and damage her, and it's like no man or woman can outrun it, so she has Comet, and it's basically Comet racing ahead of this orb that's chasing her to the end of the universe, where it finally but it's so you got in between all these flashbacks and this backstory, you get these gorgeous pages of her outrunning on Comet through the universe, past planets, through colorful spectrums of light and all sorts of things.
That's gorgeous.
It's just it's very pretty, but it's this like feat of like her doing the impossible, which counterbalances the darkness, and it's like, okay, this backstory is like what gives her the determination to do stuff like this. So it's very uplifting at the same time, despite the fact that the backstory is so dark, which is what I think makes the issue really work and click and just all fit together wonderfully. And at the end it's like, to come back for Krem, he doesn't have another orb and she doesn't give a shit about bows and arrows, as is pointed out.
I think it was arrows and swords.
Arrows and swords, sorry, yes. Equally ineffective.
I love at the beginning though where she goes, "Hello, I'm Supergirl, you're coming to the here, you shot my effing dog." I just love the whole, like, it's very action movie.
Is this her
this is her John Wick?
No, not John Wick. I was thinking the Princess Bride. The guy keeps saying,
Inigo Montoya.
Yeah,
my father prepared to die.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, but I just like her. She shows up, right? Like he's doing his bad guy thing, and she just shows up behind him. And it's just a great visual. But I do like this character with an edge. I remember when this first started, and I was like, man, I don't know if King is exactly telling a Kara that I care about. But then when we finally get here, and we almost see where this determination comes from, and why she has that edge, and it really cinches itself together. And I do think this will be one of those Supergirl stories that you can kind of point to. That, I mean, it's not all that defining, but it does do. King is doing a very good job here at defining her character and why she is different from Superman. And as great as this issue was for that origin, that last issue, where she got transported to that Earth, where, Clark had only lasted, a very minor time, and she was there for like a day and a half.
It was something like 45 minutes. Clark, you pussy, was the line towards the end.
Her and now you know where that comes from and why she is different from Clark. She's not just a girl version of Superman. She is her own unique character, and she has a little bit more grit to her. I really appreciate how the story's coming together.
We all felt in that first issue that, okay, it's interesting, this Western style story is setting up in space, but like it doesn't necessarily feel like it's like, it wasn't the sort of Supergirl story any of us expected. And I think over the issues it is kind of solidified what it is, and like, I mean, I know Connor's never been in love with it,
I liked it more as the weird Western, because I think it's kind of gone away from that as it's gone on.
Yeah, I think for most people, it's gotten better.
It's not so much True Grit like it was. That was
a large part of the appeal for me.
Right, but I do like this has become the labors of Kara, and we are seeing her do the impossible time after time, and it's not even like she's one-upping herself. She's just doing what she has to, and it's all in service of catching Krem. Yeah, and really, I do like that.
Yeah, really smart thing there. Actually, obviously, all of the art's really gorgeous, but there's the page where it switches from her, like it's almost like 2001 where she's going through the Beyond Jupiter with the colors.
The color fades away.
Yeah, right. And the page where the color fades away into the white. Do you know what I really like about that page is that there's clearly 4 panels on that page, but there's no panel lines or breaks.
You know where all of them are.
Yeah, you can see where they all are. I think that's actually really well handled.
Mm-hmm.
So nice touch. That impressed me.
Yeah. And I also like how she sets up to when Comet shows up and she's like, to the end of the universe and a little bit farther. And then that's where we see where they end up, in that splash of light. And that's why, there's no color on those pages because that's a little bit farther.
Yeah.
And it's really well handled.
Yeah. Excellent issue.
Yeah.
I think for me it's frustrating because I like all the ideas. Like just telling me that backstory for Karen, or expanding this backstory and doing this new version, essentially, this expanded version. I do like all of those beats. It's just actually reading it. It's the narration is what I'm mostly not enjoying at this point of the book.
So
that's for me. Like, this is tasting. I'm not saying it's objectively bad.
Right.
Saying for me, that's what I'm not enjoying. And when that's such a major part of how this is portraying its story, it's making reading it a bit of a chore, even though I like the actual elements. The art's obviously phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the actual, for the most part, there's obviously been odd things here or there in the story I haven't liked. But overall, like this issue, I like the story beats when you kind of lay them out. I just got frustrated reading them in this particular format.
I just can't say I agree. Like I just I was into it.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Very much saying it's taste.
Because I was still thinking up until this issue, right, where maybe we're just getting a version of a deified Kara from this girl because she's the one telling the story. But then when you add this origin and the tragedy and how
this isn't a continuity necessarily, right? Like they've said this is because it's not Black Label.
Either way.
Yeah, it's not Black Label or anything like that. So
yeah, but I think it's along those King lines where it's not in canon.
Yeah.
Or in continuity, but it's
not right up until it is.
Yeah,
right.
I don't think it'd be too hard because this is the sort of thing where this version of the origin, like they might just incorporate this at some point and sort of refer back to it. Because in the same way that Killing Joke wasn't technically canon until all of a sudden all of it was.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
There's nothing that makes us not canon.
Yeah.
Right. But if they choose not to go with that, if they want a little bit sanitary version of it, I could see them coming and changing it a little bit. Later.
Because obviously the idea of an Argo City which is floating and still survives is not a new thing. That's obviously been a thing before.
And I prefer it to Brainiac, right? Like the whole, it gets messy where Brainiac had come and taken it, and that's where we get Allura from, and back pre-Flashpoint, and that whole thing, and she becoming a villain. But so I prefer this because this does, when you get to a certain point, Kara and Clark being the only Kryptonians seems to matters more than if you have a floating, Brainiac bottle city out there somewhere, So, yeah. But as I was saying back with the narration, I'm starting to feel like, no, she is more reliable, and that the reason that it seemed like she was unreliable is because Kara keeps doing these impossible things, and you keep setting it up with like, oh, well, no, this is just through the eyes of a kid that's looking for a hero. But as she keeps doing these things, you're just like, well, no, she's just telling how she remembers it.
Yeah,
and this is what happened.
The part of the backstory where she talks about how she was like helping put the lead in the ground, and it got to 40 hours and she was falling asleep, and she like basically hurt herself to wake herself up and then kept going, and it was this impossible feat. It's kind of the more grounded version of what this book has been her doing, is like her pushing herself further.
Right.
If even just the last issue, her surviving that long on that planet was her saying, no, I'm going to push through this no matter what. Right. And so basically, I mean, I am okay in canon if we go forward with the idea that she does have like more maybe stamina is not the right word than Superman, but like she
has this survival, she has that survival mentality.
She can tough it out in a way that he can't when it comes to certain things.
Because he's a soft farm boy.
Yeah,
he was lifting bales of hay. She was drilling lead into the ground to preserve her people. So yeah, and I also like that it kind of gets away from the whole aspect that, oh, she's just a teenager, right? She don't have to worry about teenage stuff. It's like, well, no, she's a survivor of a,
that's brought up in the book. It's this idea that it's like, how can you call me your little girl? Like, after what we've been through, I'm not a kid anymore. Like, anyone who's been through this has had to grow up. Like, that's just the way it is.
And I like that it plays with that she is Supergirl, not Superwoman, and that always gets, thrown out like that. It makes her less than, and it's almost like, well, no, she's survived, and she's trying to hold on to that aspect of her.
Yeah, I like that idea, actually. The choice of using girl instead of woman is that she's trying to actually cling to a childhood that was taken from her. Is kind of a sweet idea.
Yeah, and I like that it goes through there, and that's kind of the subtext of it. And so again, for this book that started off a little bit rougher, and it just, these last two issues have really added to the Kara character in ways that, I've liked all the Kara books that have come out since Rebirth. Like, we've all been pretty up on them for the most part, but I feel this is the first one that has like heft that is going to change how people look at the character, going forward, and I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I love being super. Obviously, it's very different.
Yeah,
but
I vastly preferred that over this, I would say.
But I think it's also fair to say that this book, it's only these last couple issues that feels like it's really become about, and I'm sure, and as a whole, when you look at the whole thing, you can see how the whole thing's about Kara. But these last two issues in particular have really felt like it's pivoted into now it's making a statement about Kara herself. Right. And
whereas I feel like Being Super was, as much as we love that book, it kind of was just an updated what if Clark, what if she was the only Kryptonian kind of deal. Yeah. And how she was raised differently. But I feel like you can't pull too much from that when you're trying to tell a Supergirl story. Here, I feel like you can. We're here where this is going to kind of change that character going forward. The next writer that writes a Kara book can use this as a jumping off point for her. Because I want to see how this Kara reacts to Superman. To see how she treats him. If she has that vibe that's still my little cousin. Like, yeah, he's older than me. But, I'm still supposed to be watching out for him like she did for this girl. Like, I just like that.
Yeah. So, very good. Matt, what are you giving Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow issue 6?
8.5.
Connor?
Taking into context that the art is probably like 10 out of 10 art, I'll give it a 7.
I think I'm throwing a 9 at it, to be honest.
There you go.
Super into it.